How's it going, Webheads? My name is Ryan Walsh. Is Thanos the best villain that we've ever seen in a comic book movie? I personally think so, and I want to break this down today. Obviously, there's no secret that there's been a lot of villains within the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and a lot of villains in the past really haven't been that great. If you look at the majority of villains that have been within the Marvel Cinematic Universe in a lot of their movies, not a lot of these villains really stand out. There are some that do, but for the far majority of them, most of them are very bland and just dull and boring villains. But currently, in the last couple of movies that they've really produced and put out there, that the villains have improved in these movies, like Killmonger, Vulture, Hela, even Loki. I mean, Loki's always been great, but even Loki in the last couple of movies, all these villains have done extremely well. They've been very good villains. But in my opinion, there hasn't been a fully well-rounded villain until Thanos. And what I mean by this is really either these villains are on screen just extremely powerful and very threatening when you're watching the movie, or they just have a great motivation for what they're doing, and you can understand where they're coming from, and they don't really look as evil when you understand their motivations. But that's the problem. A lot of these villains don't really have both of these traits. It's usually one or the other. Take Hela, for example. Look at Hela, and honestly, when you see her on screen, she is extremely threatening because you know she is going to be able to defeat Thor. She can defeat Valkyrie. She probably can defeat the Hulk. We didn't get to see that, but she definitely has that kind of power and ability to do so. And even when the heroes teamed up on her, she still could defeat them, and that shows you on screen she is extremely powerful. But when it came to her motivations and her backstory, that's where the villain really lacked. I thought it was definitely a step up from what they've done in the past, like Malekith or something like that, but looking at her, she wasn't as well developed as, say, as characters like Vulture, Loki, or Killmonger. When you see those characters have a big backstory on screen. But the problem with them is that they're not extremely threatening on screen. I know if Killmonger came close to killing Black Panther, and it looked like he did, but I think everybody in the movie knew that the movie was not over and Black Panther was going to be coming back. It wasn't that big of a deal. But then when you get to a character like Thanos, there wasn't a villain that was truly balanced like Thanos is.
Perfectly balanced, as all things should be.
Leading up to Infinity War, people either knew Thanos from the comic books or they knew him from the movies. If you knew him from the comic books, you understood that he was just this big bad guy in space, that he was extremely intelligent and powerful, and he was in love with the physical embodiment of death. But if you knew him from the movies, he's just that big purple guy sitting in a chair, always smiling creepily at the camera. And that's all you really knew from him. So really just taking that into consideration, the directors and writers of Avengers Infinity War and Avengers 4 had a lot on their plate to really develop this character and make him the big bad that everybody knew was going to be coming out in this movie. And Infinity War and Avengers 4 are like the Star Wars of this generation. This is like the biggest movies, and everyone knew that Thanos really had to live up to that and really had to be that Darth Vader that everybody wanted him to be. But where Marvel really achieved greatness with Thanos was really just taking a lot of the elements that made him really cool in the comic books and making their own version of the character, kind of tweaking a little bit of everything, especially where he's an extremely smart and powerful character. You knew that even in the comic books, he was a threatening being. He could kill the heroes, and he had to be threatening. That had to show on screen. We're really just looking at the Infinity War opening scene where you see Thanos on the Asgardian ship. When I first saw that movie, it felt like nobody was safe at that point. I was genuinely scared for characters like Thor or the Hulk or Loki or even Heimdall, because all those characters were at risk at that point. And out of all the villains in the MCU so far, he has killed more heroes than anyone else. And I feel like that intimidation on screen for not only the characters in the movie, but the audience as well, where they are scared for the characters that they love within these movies, that's extremely hard to do, and that's just something that Thanos does best. So obviously Thanos really has that big checkpoint of being powerful and showing you that he is extremely powerful on screen. But where Thanos really separates himself from the competition of everybody else is that he isn't just powerful on screen or just have motivation, he has both. And really what Marvel did brilliantly was take his motivation, something similar to the comic books where he was doing everything in his power to erase half the life in the universe, assemble the Infinity Gauntlet, for death. He was in love with the physical embodiment of death within the Marvel Universe, and they simply replaced that with the universe itself. he is obsessed with balance and really just making sure the entire universe is going to thrive in the future. Where he felt like he could save his entire planet of Titan before they went completely extinct. Everybody called him a madman, and he had a solution for solving the overpopulation problem. And of course, it's completely ridiculous, but you understand where he's coming from, and that in the end game, he really is just about saving everybody and saving as many lives as they can, because it's either you kill half the life on the planet and the other half survives, or everybody dies. And he doesn't want everybody to die.
With all 6 stones, I could simply snap my fingers. They would all cease to exist. I call that mercy.
And I think that's something that the audience and myself really connected with, and it definitely makes the villain more sympathetic because you understand where he's coming from. But of course, his people didn't want to make the same sacrifice that he was willing to make, so they ended up dying, and he lives with that. He understands that he needs to do the right thing for the entire universe now that his people died, and have that as an example of what is going to happen. And a lot of you comic book fans, along with myself, may think that just having death within the movie and having that be the motivation for why Thanos is doing what he does, that may have been fine, but doing it the way they did do it in Infinity War just makes it a little more relatable for the audience to understand. And honestly, I doubt many general audience members watching Infinity War would really understand that Thanos wants to kill half the life in the universe for the physical embodiment of death, because that's just a little too outlandish, and it just is a little corny if you really think about it. But Thanos just trying to save half the life in the universe is exactly why he is the hero in the story. And that's why everybody was really surprised by the way the movie ended, because everyone thought the movie was going to end with the Avengers succeeding in that movie, but instead it was really just Thanos succeeding. And people didn't understand that because they're used to the Avengers always winning, and they never understood that the movie wasn't about the Avengers. The movie was about Thanos the whole time. He accomplished his mission in the movie, and it was a happy ending for him, even though it is kind of messed up in a way. The only villain that I've seen win in a movie like this before is Darth Vader. He was the only other villain that I think is just as good as Thanos, because he has similar traits to Thanos, where he is extremely powerful on screen, but also his motivations make sense, where he wants to bring balance to the entire galaxy and have order. And deep down, they believe they're doing the right thing, which is why it makes them so much better villains. But of course, Webheads, let me know down in the comments, do you guys think Thanos is the greatest villain of all time? If you guys want more on Thanos, definitely consider checking out this playlist right over here. Definitely consider subscribing to Webhead and turning on the bell notification if you guys want more on Avengers 4 going forward. But Webheads, thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Bye-bye.